You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Oh, I'm so excited we're all here together again. It's such a great time when we are.
Yeah.
Hey, it's great to be here. Good to see you guys.
Kirk, a few episodes ago, Victoria, I don't believe you were here for this. You discussed the potential about de-extinction in mammoths and that particular movement in science.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well,
cool.
Kirk, you mentioned that. And then this particular news story fell into my lap. And I'm like, what fun happenstance.
Okay.
I have to talk about it. It
Cool.
felt appropriate.
What do you got?
So we're going to go back in time a little bit. In the 1980s, there was an archaeological dig in a region north of Jerusalem in a cave in some of the Judean desert. And in that cave, they found a really well-preserved, intact seed.
Yes. I'm so glad you're going to talk about this. I know what this is.
Oh, fabulous.
This is so cool.
I don't know what this is, although I can kind of guess.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. So this seed, it seemed intact. And in fact, when they looked at it closer, it was in pristine condition. But it's the 1980s. They had other things to look at and deal with. So they kind of just put it in the vaults for a few decades. So the seed was in good shape and everything, but no one could really identify what the seed was. Seed identification. As naturalists, I am sure that that we all know that it's very hard to identify various things. I love it. I get the pictures from my friends all the time of like, hey, what's this bird? And it's usually like the worst picture of a bird that I possibly could have ever seen. But I can't fault them too much because it is, a bird, and birds are hard to photograph.
Yeah, and like
take
stuff
pictures
that's out of
in the first
context,
place.
like poorly lit, blurry, and you're like,
they're always moving.
Could be.
Yeah, and seeds, especially. I mean, there's
seeds
certain
are very
seeds
difficult.
that we all can identify just because of they're very common plants we deal with. But if it's one of the lesser known plants, like it's not one of the major trees or one of the ones that sticks to your clothes all the time.
So,
it's like someone's like, "What's this seed?" And you're like, "I don't know, one of like 10,000 possible plants in this park."
It's a seed. I don't know. Yeah. So scientists looked at it. They're like, I don't know. Looks like it's a seed from some sort of tree, but we don't really know. And there were other things happening, so they put it off to the side.
Right.
And so there was some speculations and everything, but they weren't really doing anything with it.
Well, and it's crazy old. So planting it, if it was a newer thing, let's plant, see what it is. But if it's super old, you're like, well, it's not going to grow.
Right.
So all you can do is compare it to something else, in some seed bank or something.
Comparative morphology.
Yeah.
We're going to hold on to that. So because there were speculations, fast forward to about 2010, Dr. Sarah Salon was looking through the archive and found this seed and was like, ooh, this is cool. What is it? And no one seemed to know. Looked at the research log and all that kind of thing. No one could really figure out what was going on or what it was, or they knew where it came from, a part of a cave in Judean desert. but no real thoughts of where or what it could be. So, just like you said, Kirk, you can't identify the seed, so you got to plant it. So, these scientists, what they did in 2010, it was pristine condition. So what they did, they soaked it in some fertilizer and some hormones to help it like trigger growth. And they put it in soil.
Uh-huh.
And it started to grow. Which is amazing. Because this seed had been radiocarbon dated to about 1,000 years old.
Well, that's an old seed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an old seed.
So even though they weren't expecting much because it's 1,000-year-old seed and it might not grow. But they had actually previously, one of the people who were working on this, Dr. Elaine Soloui, had done this with 2,000-year-old date palm seeds, done this method, and gotten them to grow.
Did they germinate?
So they were pretty sure they could get this particular little seed to grow. And it did. Just pretty shortly after, it started to sprout some leaves.
We're not hearing you, Rachel.
And then Dr. Salon started to share images of this little tree with botanists everywhere so we could identify and see what this tree was.
Cool.
Which is really cool.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Cut to now.
Amazing.
It's 14 years later, and this tree is about 10 feet tall.
Awesome. It's still going.
It's still going. However, it has not flowered. It has not borne any sort of fruit. It's in a greenhouse. It is not just out in the wild or anything like that. It's being very carefully monitored.
And nobody recognizes it?
No one knows what it is. The botanists that are around, that have been working on this, even with where we are now with DNA that we can use, because plants have their own version of DNA, so they can sequence and see what the DNA is. And we don't know. It's not in any database. We are pretty sure that it's in the genus Carminophora, which has about 200 species.
Ooh, what is that?
That's a great question. It's a genus of trees. They have a lot of species of trees that are found in like Africa, Madagascar. Think of like a really shrubby, bushy tree.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. But we just don't know what exactly it is. However, based on what this seed is, what it's grown into, it seems to be related to some sort of myrrh tree. So like that particular genus is in the myrrh family. The fact that it was in Jerusalem and that area.
Interesting. Okay.
They're thinking that it could be.
That was a very valuable product.
Exactly. They're thinking it could be a Judean balsam. Or they wanted it to be like a Judean balsam, which doesn't exist anymore.
Oh.
Okay. Plot twist.
Yeah. So like.
Wow. So it's an extinct tree.
It's an extinct tree. It is not. I stand corrected for a hot second. So sorry. So they think it's closely related to the Judean balsam. That Judean balsam is something that is still around and is pretty well prevalent. You can smell the resin. And it's like, yes. But it is not a Judean balsam, but it's a close cousin.
Okay, so it's a closely related species
doesn't
that
exist.
May have gone extinct.
Yeah. So they still don't know what this tree is. They think that it could be a important tree that was in the talked about in the Bible and everything, but we'd never that was used in medicine, but we don't know.
Sure. Do we know? And I maybe I missed you said this. Are the seeds? Was this something that was found? They think incidentally, or this is something that was saved because it was important. You know what I mean? Did they just happen to find a seed in this spot, or was it that
That's
someone
a
had purposely saved the
Good
seed
question.
for the future?
Yeah. So they couldn't. There's not really anything that talks about whether or not it was part of like a seed bank, which is what you're talking about. But this does
Sure.
give good implications for seed banks for the future, because we do have seeds that we are preserving just in case something happens, right?
Right.
It doesn't seem like it. But it does seem to be, I mean, it was just found in an archeological dig. So they were doing a dig in a cave and they happened to find this seed. They weren't looking for a seed bank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know much about that particular dig and what they were looking for. But they
Sure.
they
I
found
don't know
it.
did it get stuck to the bottom of someone's shoe way back when and left in this
Right.
dig site, or was it like someone saved these because it was of value at the time? I mean, I suppose it probably depends on the context of where it was found and
Yeah.
what it was found with and whatnot. But sometimes you just don't know either, right? Like something.
Right.
There's probably all kinds of seeds in my house right now that I'm not purposely saving. They just end up in my house.
Right. So
Right.
that's what they kind of think it might be. Like from the research that I've done about this particular tree, I'm more focused on the growth of this particular seed from when they found it and started to grow it. There wasn't much discussion about it. Was in pristine condition, so I would assume that it would be a seed that was saved, especially since the tree that they think it could be, which is extinct, is this like Tesori or Sori tree, which is like a really big medicinal tree that was really well sought after and coveted.
So it sounds likely it was on
So
purpose.
it probably was on purpose, but until it flowers
Yeah.
or produces a fruit, we won't know for sure. At the moment,
Cool.
it is just this one tree that is growing, and it looks like this other kind of tree, but it isn't this tree. We're not quite sure.
I hope they're taking some cuttings and planting
They
those
are.
and stuff too, because if something
Yeah.
happens to that one tree, you're done.
That's one heck of a genetic bottleneck.
Yeah.
There.
Definitely. So it's a wild time. It is a very cool thing that just kind of came across my dash one day, and I was like, this is fun.
Absolutely. That's one of those ones that I want an update on too later on.
Yes, this is one that we'll definitely want to have an update on. The paper that was published in September of 2024 was the characterization and analysis of a Commonophora species germinated from an ancient seed, suggests a possible connection to a species mentioned in the Bible, which was published in Nature. We love open access journals, by the way. The key authors on this paper were Dr. Sarah Salone, Dr. Elaine Solui, Morgan Gostel, Marcus Eagley, et al. And truly phenomenal work. Beautiful paper, really easy to read, which is really cool. I also had really good information from a CNN article. Actually, CNN Science, lost biblical plant with medicinal properties resurrected from a 1,000-year-old seed. So that's my sources. That's what I've got for you both this week. Is they found a 1,000-year-old
Very cool.
seed and they planted it. We don't know what it is. So that brings the
Awesome.
thoughts of bringing mammoths back just that much closer, huh, Kirk?
I mean, if it's a food they can eat, then sure.
Can you find a mammoth seed to plant?
Not exactly.
Oh, is that not how that works?
No.
Darn it.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, and when we return, it'll be Victoria.
back.
Woo!
Kirk, a few months ago, you talked on the show about how the human Y chromosome is very, very slowly disappearing.
Yeah, it's like this
And-
episode
that
was like
was-
callbacks to Kirk's episodes.
Yes, it
This was
is.
fun.
That is really fun,
and-
but what a horrible, most difficult thing for me to try to put onto our Instagram.
Oh, that was a tough one. Yeah, put a big letter Y.
I think I put a platypus.
Nice.
So your topic inspired my topic for today, which is all the many ways that human sex chromosomes can be that are not the usual way.
Awesome. Oh, so glad you're doing this because like that was
Yes.
I did not have. It's such a deep dive. Like I didn't have time to go into that in my episode, so I was kind of hoping someone
Yeah.
would do this. Awesome. Let's hear it.
Well, I'm going to amend what I just said. I'm not going to go into all the different ways because
No, you can't. There's too
so
many.
many different ways. I'm going to go into some of the major
Yeah.
ways.
Oh, there's so many.
You know, I feel like this is not only an interesting topic, but a relevant one, since there is some misinformation, being put out there about biological sex and what it entails.
right.
It's so much more
There's a lot
complicated
of
than what people's
misunderstanding and
third grade knowledge is. Yeah.
well, the big thing, sorry, like little soapbox moment. The big thing is like we do think about it from the very distilled, simplistic way we had to learn about it in college or like high school or middle school because
Yeah.
you had to make it digestible for a 12-year-old to understand.
Yes, exactly. And obviously, there's a lot of misinformation about gender and gender identity out there, but I am not going to talk about that today. I'm just going to focus on the biology here. So, chromosomal and physical sex characteristics. So, as you mentioned, Rachel, yes, in high school biology or maybe middle school, I think it was probably high school, we all learn that there are two human sex chromosomes, X and Y. Men get an X and a Y, and women have two X's, and children get one from each of their parents. So the mom always donates an X, and then the dad's donation determines the biological sex of the baby. Which,
Right.
That's true as far as it goes, which is,
Exactly
legit.
the phrase I was thinking of. It's true as far as it goes.
Yeah, it's true for the majority of people.
Right.
Mostly true.
But it is far from the whole story. And yeah, this could get a little complicated, but as I mentioned, I'm actually going to be giving you the simple version. So first of all, there are many, many ways that sex chromosomes can differ from what I just described. Unfortunately, this area of biology is just full of eponyms, which eponym is like when something is named after the person that discovered it or some other
sure.
person.
Yep.
I hate it because it doesn't
Right.
tell you what it
Of
is.
course.
Yeah.
Right. It's Victoria's disease. Like, well, I don't know what that is.
What is that?
Oh,
Are you
You
saying I have a
don't. You
disease?
generally don't want a disease named after you.
no, that's a bad thing.
Yeah. You don't want to be famous for having had a disease.
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, one of the most common sex chromosome differences is called Klinefelter syndrome.
Okay.
Like, what is that? More helpfully, also known as 47XXY. So that means that this person has 47 rather than the usual 46 chromosomes, and the extra one is an extra X.
Okay.
So the sex chromosomes are X, X, and Y. So this has an incidence of about 1 in 1,000 male births,
Okay.
which,
That's sizable.
yeah, it's sizable. And for comparison, it's kind of roughly the same as the incidence of Down syndrome worldwide,
Okay.
which, another eponym, also more helpfully known as trisomy 21.
Right.
There's a movement in medicine to move away from these eponyms because they're not helpful.
I love
Anyway, yes. So people with 47XXY, which is what I'm just going to call it, have usually male sex characteristics, but they tend to have lower muscle tone, often some motor delays. They have smaller testicles, less body hair, more breast development, like broader hips than typical males, due to lower testosterone.
that. Okay.
And they're usually infertile. And this actually often goes undetected. There's an estimate that I saw that only about 25% of affected people are ever diagnosed.
Whoa.
And there's actually even a small, but just to get into like a little taste of how complicated this is, there's also a small handful of cases in the literature of individuals with the same genotype, so the same type of chromosome, so 47XXY, but they have female sex characteristics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then actually for all of these, you can get into really complicated stuff with mosaicism, which is when some cells in the body have one genetic profile and another set of cells in the body have another genetic profile,
Right.
which it's a little different than
man.
chimerism, which I covered in another episode, but kind of you can think of it as similar.
I was just thinking about chimerism.
Yeah. So with chimerism, you start with two different eggs. And with mosaicism, you start with one egg and then it kind of splits and like stuff happens genetically. Like the chromosomes wind up different in the two halves that it's split into.
Sure.
Anyway, so like it can get real complicated real fast. And all of these, like once you get into the mosaics, it gets more and more rare, but it does happen. All right, so next one I'm going to talk about is Turner syndrome, which is 45XO. So that indicates someone who has only one X chromosome and no other sex chromosomes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So again, there's like certain typical physical characteristics and infertility. And people with 45XO are they're biologically female. And incidence is about 1 in 2,000 to 1 in 5,000 female births. So like a little rarer than the one I just spoke about, but not that rare.
No.
There's also trisomy X, also known as triple X syndrome, which I think you can figure out what that means.
Yep.
I've heard of that.
Which affects, yeah. So that affects females too. So those are like 3 of the most common sex chromosome differences, but there are also many, many others. And it's worth noting here that for the most part, chromosome differences like these are not inherited. They're pretty much an accident that happens during conception.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who have these sex chromosome differences often have bodies that appear like fairly typically male or female for the most part. However, people who have them can be considered under the bigger umbrella of intersex, which is an umbrella term for people who have some kind of difference with how they present relative to the sort of Platonic ideal of male and female binary.
Sure.
And there are many other conditions that can cause someone to be intersex or have ambiguous genitalia at birth. So another example here would be that is a chromosome difference, but also results in intersex, is 45X, 46XY mosaicism. So some cells in the body have only a single X, and others have an XY, so like a typical male cell versus only a single X. And that can lead to a whole range of different ways that their bodies can look, including, so some have genitals that look typically male, some that look typically female, and many others that are somewhere in between, what's known as ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then, some of these other intersex conditions are not necessarily to do with chromosomes, but have more to do with the body not being able to make or process or somehow use male and female hormones. So, for example, there's androgen insensitivity syndrome. Androgen is just another word for male hormones. So it means the body is not sensitive. It's a genetic male, XY, whose body's not sensitive to testosterone and other male hormones because basically the testosterone receptors on their cells don't work. And yeah, it is fascinating. So even though that's the case, some people with this condition do have a male-appearing body, but many others have a body that can look entirely female on the outside, but they'll have, instead of ovaries, they'll have internal testes.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so like some of them develop a vagina, like some even develop some kind of rudimentary uterus, but they won't have ovaries, so they wouldn't be able to bear a child.
That's kind of a one that's, and there's a number of ones like this that are just a good example of why when people are like, oh, if you have XX chromosomes, you're a woman, and XY, you're a man, and you just go, that's not actually what determines sex. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you can tell with
And
some of
that
the other
doesn't
ones
even-
too.
I mean, that doesn't even like determine or talk about the people who can't, who are not able to have children for various reasons.
Right.
Ugh. I have feelings. I don't
Yeah.
want to
Yes.
get into it.
But it's just, I'm just the whole idea of like, often it's testosterone or, it's presence. If you, like you're saying, if you are technically, have an XY chromosome, but for whatever reason you are not sensitive to testosterone and your body, doesn't develop, it's like, what are you saying? That person's like, what do you, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like,
What
this
is-
person looks like
what
a
is
woman,
that
like, you feel
person
like a
according-
woman, but like, because their body can't
Mhm.
process, all those male hormones, it's like, yeah, it's not a simple thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's,
And
man, it's complicated.
it is really complicated. And there's, I mean, it's, I said I was not going to talk about gender
Yeah.
identity development. I'm going to touch on it briefly, but like, there's a lot that's not known about that. But one of the things that they think can cause development of a male gender identity is exposure to high levels of testosterone, especially in utero. And so, like, if your body is not sensitive to testosterone, even though you're an XY, like,
Yeah.
maybe you're not going to develop a male gender identity.
Right. And it's important. Now you said you weren't going to like dive into that, but the idea of to separate like gender identity as a whole, which essentially, to throw kind of a simplified definition out there, like how you sort of mentally perceive yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a completely different subject than what you're talking about, which is purely like, how do you physically present?
Yes.
Exactly.
And,
yes.
but that alone, as you're pointing out, is crazy complicated without even getting into the mental, part of
Yes.
gender identity. I'm just the physical, sexual identity
100%.
is not as clear cut as people would like to think it is.
It is absolutely not as
It's
clear
a
cut.
spectrum.
And there's one other intersex cause. It is a spectrum. There's one other condition that can cause intersex that I wanted to talk about. It's called 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency, which is a mouthful.
Yeah.
But for anyone who's read
Love
the excellent novel Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, this is the condition that the protagonist Cal has. This is not like
Okay.
a major spoiler or anything. I think it is revealed pretty early on that he's
Okay.
intersex. So it's a genetic mutation that means that one form of testosterone is not converted to another form in the body.
Okay.
And as a result, at birth, the genitals can appear anywhere from fully male to ambiguous to fully female. So like Cal in the book, some people with this condition are assumed to be female and raised as girls. But then at puberty, they start to develop male secondary sex characteristics like deep voice, muscle
A
mass.
beard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
They tend not to have as much facial and body hair, but yes.
Okay.
So yes, just another very complicated entry in this list of complicated things. And as I mentioned, I've really only scratched the surface here. There's a lot more. My main point, which we have already discussed, is that it's really complicated and it's not clear cut and it's not as simple as we were taught in high school biology. Just to kind of wrap things up, there's a lot of different definitions and ways of estimating this, but one estimate that I've seen that is thrown around a lot is that approximately 1.7% of the population somehow doesn't conform to the XY equals male, XX equals female ideal.
Sure.
And I mean, in the end, everyone is a human. And the takeaway from this is that just like everything else in nature, biological sex just doesn't fit into the little boxes that we've made for it.
Exactly. That's sort of the reoccurring theme.
Absolutely.
As we said, we're coming up on episode 200 real soon. And nature laughs at our little boxes has been sort of a mantra we've had from the beginning. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's more complicated than you ever think it's going to be.
Especially when you get into it, like you actually do the research and like, oh my gosh. Some of the things that I'm like, oh yeah, this means this and this means that. No, it doesn't.
Yep.
So my sources this week, I got a lot of information and links from Wikipedia. I also looked at an article in Encyclopedia Britannica and also the website for Interact, Advocates for Intersex Youth. We're going to take another short break, and when we come back, It's going to be Kirk.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to talk about The Undertaker. As we all know, on June 28th, 1998, The Undertaker threw mankind off Hell in a Cell and plummeted 16 feet through an announcer's table. It was one of the most epic moments in wrestling history.
I was about to be like, oh,
Okay.
it's wrestling.
Wrestling, yeah.
Okay.
Did Brett put you up to this?
No, he did not. Friend of the show, Brett, is cheering in excitement right now because I'm finally talking about professional wrestling on the show.
He's so proud. I do love that both Victoria and I went, The Undertaker? Like, what is he talking about? Undertaker what?
But no, he did not put me up to that. I wanted to get that out of the way for all the wrestling fans because I know as soon as I mention The Undertaker, that's exactly what comes to mind. The Undertaker that I want to talk about this week is a different Undertaker.
Sorry, Brett.
This one happens to be a bird. So you got to put professional wrestling out of your mind for a moment. We're talking about a big bird this week. It's known as the Undertaker Bird because of how it looks. So first of all, this bird is 5 feet tall.
That is almost a Rachel.
Holy.
This is not a small
I'm
bird.
sorry. 5 feet tall, like from its feet to its head?
Yeah.
No, I'm out, Kirk.
Yeah.
I'm out.
So
I'm done.
I was going to say, in
so large.
our standard unit of measure here on the podcast, it's just like 4 inches short of one Rachel.
I could look at this bird in the eye. I don't want to do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you
No.
don't. I just Googled it.
Yeah. So if this sounds to you to be tall for a bird, you are correct. This is a tall bird. It's actually a type of stork. Its body is white and the wings and tail are black. So it looks like it's wearing like an old-fashioned, like long black tailcoat. Its head is bald except for a few wispy gray feathers. So they all kind of look like old men wearing black coats. And apparently, the overall look reminded people of a group of elderly undertakers wearing their long black coats with tails. So that's kind of where this nickname of the Undertaker Bird came from.
Is this related?
Yeah, it's kind of real ugly
It's
bird.
related to this.
Sorry.
Is it shoebill related to that one at all? Oh,
Shoebills have a large bill, and so does this bird. I don't know how necessarily closely related they are.
okay.
But this one...
Oh, this looks like a stork that like made love and had a baby with a vulture. Why, Kirk?
Oh, why? We're gonna get back to the why, Rachel. That's a very important question. I want to finish painting the picture a little bit here, and I can get to that. The wings I mentioned that they have these black wings. What I didn't mention is that they are huge wings. They can have up to a 12-foot, or I saw some sources maybe saying maybe even a 13-foot wingspan. So by all measures,
two of
these
me.
are
I'm out.
very
I'm out.
large
I'm out.
birds.
No. I'm out. I'm gone.
All right,
More
well,
than two of you.
Rachel, I'm glad you were here for as much of the show as you were. Thanks for being with
I'm
us
done.
this week.
More than two of Kirk.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, two Kirk
my.
wingspan. Which is crazy. That's crazy.
That's too big.
So the Undertaker-
That's too big for a bird.
The Undertaker stork is a nickname or kind of a common name. The more official name you may have heard is the Maribou Stork. And this is a bird that is found throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And the idea of them being Undertaker birds also derives from their diet. Now, most storks that we're familiar with eat a wide variety of like small animals, kind of whatever they can catch, but not the marabou. They eat carrion. And so when you mentioned that they kind of look like a cross between a vulture, There's a reason why they don't have the
reason for
feathers
that.
on their head
Got it.
because much like vultures that don't have feathers on their head, yeah, they're sticking their heads into the carcasses of dead animals,
yeah.
and you don't want to
want
get
that
guts and
stuff.
blood and stuff all stuck to your head. So, featherless birds
It's
with no
so hard
feathers
to
on their
clean.
head are usually carrion eaters, and yeah, you want to try to get blood out of feathers, forget about it. So
It's so hard.
you have these tall, bald, black cloaked wearing birds that gather around dead animals, and thus, the Undertaker moniker has stuck. Now, because they like carrion, they're often seen hanging out with vultures and hyenas, kind of hoping to clean up the scraps or perhaps get a really nice meal if there was just too much for the other animals to eat. They also, which is really fascinating, tend to have an affinity for wildfires. And while many animals are going to try to avoid fire, Maribou storks tend to fly toward fires because they've learned that a wildfire means dead animals and also panicked live animals that are fleeing the flames. So imagine being like a small animal running from a wildfire. You're just keeping ahead of the flames, only to realize the flames are driving you toward a group of hungry storks, snatching up every small animal being driven toward them. Just sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Like a bad day at the office right there. Unless
Well,
you're a
and
stork.
those-
sounds like a
it's good.
very,
Those storks
very
look
bad day.
freaking terrifying. So
Yeah,
that looks
they're
like a nightmare.
kind of scary looking. Yeah. So I think we can really think of them, talking about the eating carrion or kind of going after these animals during a fire. They're pretty opportunistic feeders. They eat what they can find. I did see one reference to them eating baby flamingos
Oh, no.
when they can find them.
oh my gosh.
And
Oh my
I don't know
God.
why that seems more wild than eating other animals, but for some reason, like, that just sounds like, no, you're eating baby flamingos? No. But
They're so cute.
that's what they do.
Like pale.
I know. This is what they do. So beware, flamingos. The Undertaker comes for thee. So when I described the bird, I didn't describe all the features of the bird. I was kind of describing the ones that make it look like an Undertaker. There are some other ones I did not describe that are also partially what makes this
Unfortunate.
bird so weird. Yeah. So first up, let's talk about their legs. Technically, their legs are black.
What?
I say technically because often when you see them, their legs appear white.
Yeah.
And that's because
Oh.
they defecate on themselves
Gross.
to keep cool.
Gross.
Don't turkey vultures
It's
do
lovely.
that too?
A
I
number
think.
of birds will do
Yeah.
this. It's called urohydrosis. And it's not
You know what
unheard
that
of
sounds
in-
like, Kirk?
in
You're a
animals.
grossest.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Ugh.
So it's not unheard of in other animals, but for the sake of your fellow humans, we ask that you do not try this one out. That's just, even if you're hot, this is nasty. Don't do that. Another weird thing about their physical appearance, and this is really weird, is they have an inflatable neck pouch. Now, I don't mean just like a little,
No,
like you see
it's
some
big.
birds will have like a little thing. This is big. Okay. During breeding season, it extends and it hangs down most of their breast. It is a pink,
Oh my God.
fleshy pouch that hangs down up to 18 inches off of kind of their
Ugh.
neck, throat area down their breast.
There's
and
some
it's
obvious
fleshy,
jokes
there's no
that I'm not
feathers
going
on
to
it.
make.
Yeah, it's gross. And it serves two functions. First up, as evidenced by the fact that they get larger during breeding season, these serve a courtship ritual purpose. Basically like, hey ladies, check out my big sack. That's
Look at
basically
my
what
neck.
they're saying,
Yeah.
right?
It does have a certain look to it. Also.
Yeah, it does.
But 18 inches of so we're used to males being more show-offs than females in the natural world, so it would not be surprising if only the males had these sacks, but actually both the males and the females have them. So when I said like the hey ladies check out my big sack, there was kind of a joke, like they both have it. But apparently the male will kind of first show off, and what we'll try to do is inflate his big red sack, and then the females will inflate her sack to kind of show like that she's interested.
Okay.
Now, at this point in the podcast, I would really like to stop saying the word sack so much, but I'm afraid I can't because we aren't done with it. It has just one more function that we have to talk about, and that has to do with their voice. So these birds really don't have a
Oh,
voice.
no.
They lack a voice box.
Oh.
So they cannot sing like other birds do. What they can do is take air into this sac, and then when they blow it out through their nares, it makes kind of a grunting sound. And one of the weird little tidbits I came upon is that the sac is only connected to the left nostril for some reason. So they only grunt out of their left nostril, not the right. Weird physiological thing. I have no idea. They also do communicate by clapping their large foot-long beaks together. They've got a big old stork beak, and they kind of quack, 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 quack together, like a number of bird species do.
I don't ever want to meet this bird.
You know, I think it'd be fascinating to see. I don't know if I want to get too close.
Yeah, from a distance,
but that's what I have for you. It's a 5-foot-tall, fire-loving, Undertaker cosplaying, dead animal-eating, love sack-wearing, left nostril grunting, leg defecating stork. You're welcome.
Kirk, this is why we have the podcast for moments like this, but at the same time, these are the moments where I just sit and just wonder, why?
What an amazing world.
Why does this exist? I love it.
Purely to amuse us, apparently. Yeah, love it. So yeah, check them out. Maribou Storks, very cool. But
we'll be on the
we've reached the end of the show.
Oh, we did it.
Thanks everyone for stopping by this week, and hope everybody just take some time to get out there in nature and enjoy the world.
What a wild world we live in.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.